Hi friends! I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. We're going to change things up a little bit. I'm usually on Facebook Live and we are talking about guided reading or all things balanced literacy, but tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about science. So maybe you are here because you want to learn some more. Maybe you're here because science is really hard for you to fit into your day and you're like, oh, maybe I can grab some tips. Or maybe you're here just because you logged onto Facebook at the right time. No matter why you're here, I'm so glad you're here. If you want to tag a friend who might be interested in trying out these tips that I share with you tonight, then you should do that. I'm going to share in I'm going to share in a few minutes how a great teaching pal really helped me in my Science Interactive Notebook journey. So I'd love for you to tag a friend who you think might want to do this with you or might want to learn along with you. So tonight we're going to be diving into all things Science Interactive Notebook related. But before we get started, I should introduce myself. My name is Amanda Richardson. I blog at mrsrichardsonsclass.com. I taught kindergarten and first grade for several years before transitioning to staying at home with my children, creating teaching products for you guys to use in your classrooms, trying to make your teaching life easier, and providing professional development. So I provide professional development for all things balanced literacy, and I've done a few science sessions as well last spring. And so tonight we're going to dive into some science. So let me start by sharing a little bit about my interactive notebook story, because I feel like in all of teaching, in every new teaching thing that we try, we all have a little story to share, and we all started somewhere. And sometimes it's just so great to be able to relate to somebody who started where we did. And so I started at zero. I knew nothing about interactive notebooks. In my very first year of teaching, I taught in a fabulous school that was Title I, and we were super blessed to have a science instructional coach. I now know we were super blessed to have him and how incredible and amazing he was. And I knew that at the time, but I didn't realize that every school did not have a science instructional coach. Since then, I've worked in other schools and we have reading and we have math instructional coaches who are there to help us out, but we don't always have a science one. And so having a science instructional coach, I realized was super unique, but it also was awesome. So it's my journey with interactive notebooks started with him, Mr. Glover, and he was great. And he said to me, your kids need to be writing about science. You need to be doing a science journal or an interactive notebook. And I was like, an interactive notebook? I don't even know what that is. And so I said, but you know what? A science journal, I can try that. And so I did. I stapled together manila construction paper, put some colored construction paper for the front cover, and we wrote about science. That's how it went. And it was great. And I'm so glad that he nudged me to at least start doing something and getting my kids writing more about our science and what we are learning. Fast forward a few years later, I was at a new school and somebody came to me and said, one of my teammates came to me who was planning science for our team that year and said, hey, I really want to do interactive notebooks. We need to make these like foldables and these flip book things. And I'm like, great, I can figure out how to make those. I can make those for us. Let's do this. And so I made them for our team. And I really dug into using interactive notebooks in my first grade classroom. Then when I moved back to the kindergarten classroom, I took some of that with me. And we use them in my kindergarten classroom. So tonight, I am going to share 4 things. I'm going to share what interactive notebooks are, why we use them, how to use them and what worked for me in my classroom, and then some tips for using them. So 4 quick things. Okay, so what are interactive notebooks? I feel like a couple years ago, they kind of became a buzzword in education, and I know we started seeing things pop up a lot about them. And I'm grateful too. I'm grateful because I also learned more as they became more popular in education and for elementary teachers. So So what are they? They basically serve, interactive notebooks serve as an anchor for every standard that is going to be taught in that subject. So like, I know some people do math interactive notebooks or reading interactive notebooks. I never have tried those, but I have done them in science. And so our interactive notebooks served as an anchor for all of the standards and all of the learning that we had throughout the year. Another thing is that no two interactive notebooks are the same. My interactive notebook isn't going to look like my student's interactive notebook, and Sally's interactive notebook isn't going to look like John's interactive notebook. They're all going to look different, and they're supposed to look different. Students are encouraged to do things as they want. Not when they want. I mean, you are the teacher and you're going to have them do things when you want them to do them, but they will do them in a way that they want to do them. And really, they help personalize our learning, the students' learning. It helps them take ownership of their learning, and so they're a really great tool. So why do we use them? We use them because they have the ability to enhance student learning, but I must say, you have to determine that. Not every single lesson is going to have an interactive notebook component, and that's okay. They don't have to. And there are times that the interactive notebook isn't enhancing learning, and so you really have to watch for that. As the teacher, you are looking for times that the interactive notebooks can enhance the student's learning. They also help organize the information that is being taught. So like I said, they are an anchor for every standard. That's what they are. And we use them because they help organize that information that the students are constantly taking in, and we want them to remember and retain. There's a lot of brain research that supports interactive notebooks. Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, got to dig back into your college classes it makes me do that when I hear his name. And there's a lot of note-taking research that all support the use of using interactive notebooks. They also provide a learning portfolio that students can refer back to and flip through and use just as a reference. Like I said, they're an anchor for their learning for every standard that we cover in that subject. And so students are able to look back in their interactive notebook and refer back to something that they've learned. They also are a great RTI tool for teachers. I use them all the time. So many times I would need writing samples, or I would need like authentic writing samples, like the student produced this on their own, and that I could pull from their interactive notebook. And sometimes even for my kindergarten babies, I was able to say, look, I showed them how to do this and they weren't even able to copy something that I was doing. And like I said, interactive notebooks, no two should look the same. They don't have to look the same. I guess if students happen to be thinking the same way, then they might look the same, and that's okay. But like I was saying, they serve as a great RTI tool because it's like a portfolio that you have. So that's why we use them. Okay, so let's talk about how to use interactive notebooks in our classroom. Most of the time I used mine, I would start them whole group, and then the students would finish them independently. So in interactive notebooks, there are two sides. There's the left side and there's the right side. I'm not sure if this is going to show correctly because I think it flips it in this live. I'm so sorry. But a left side and a right side of the interactive notebook. The left side is the output. So that's where the students are recording all that they are learning. It is student-led. The left side of that notebook is where the students are taking notes, writing things that they are connecting with the topic, writing questions, writing I can statements, brainstorming things. That is their space to write in and to record their learning, hence the note-taking aspect that comes into place with interactive notebooks. On the right side, that is the input side of the interactive notebook. That is teacher directed. So this is where a foldable goes. There are other things you can put there. Maybe you're going to do a vocabulary match. Maybe you're going to direct them more. on what you want them to record on that side. In kindergarten and in first grade, for me, for our classroom, it worked best if I had a foldable for them to put on that side. So they did what I asked them to. They completed the foldable on the right side of their notebooks in our classroom. Okay. I also would use them as we were doing an activity that led to recording in the interactive notebook, which would be the input part, like something that I'm leading them in doing, and then I am asking them or guiding them in what to record. And then we would also use them to write about our learning after a lesson. So that would be that output side. So I would teach a lesson and then they would go write about their learning on that left side, the output side. Okay, so two sides, and the two sides are important too. Okay, so I'm going to share a few tips for using them as well. And you know, my goal was always to keep it simple. Sometimes they would get super overwhelming, especially for kindergarten kiddos. So if I kept it simple, that made it easy for us to implement. And then we weren't spending an eternity on one foldable, because I know lots of times, I see some foldables and I'm like, oh, good gracious, that would just take us 45 minutes and there goes my entire block to teach science. Like, that cannot happen. So my goal was to keep it simple, to make things easy for them to implement as well. Okay, so here's some of the supplies I used. I used glue bottles. Yes, I use glue bottles, and you might think I'm crazy. I even wrote a blog post about how I used glue bottles even in kindergarten. But what I learned with interactive notebooks is that with the glue sticks, they don't always, the pieces or the foldables that we were gluing on the notebooks don't always stay well. So, in 2 months, when we're flipping back through that book, because we're in that book, in that notebook all the time, it comes undone, and the glue doesn't hold as well. So we used glue bottles, yes. Crayons or markers, if you want to use markers, that's totally fine, so that they can color and be creative and express themselves however they choose. You need scissors. We used spiral notebooks. These were our favorites. Most of the time, you can grab them for 10 cents at the beginning of the year. I felt like they gave us a little bit more space than a composition book does. And also, for my first graders, I liked that they had the lines. So many times my students, were supposed to come with them, but if they didn't, they were super cheap for me to grab during back to school time, like now. Okay, then so a spiral, an envelope. I'll show you why. An envelope, because we glued it in the back flap like this, and it held all of our unused pieces. A rubber band. I usually had a rubber band that wraps around here to keep it closed, because it gets super fat throughout the year. And then a piece of ribbon, a long piece of ribbon. So, okay, so this is how I organized them and I set up our notebooks. We would start by, on the first page, I'm going to flip back and forth between a few notebooks as I show you what I'm talking about in each of them. The first page, this is mine from 2012. This thing is like 5 years old now. The first page would kind of be like our title page. We'd write our name, our grade, and then the school year. And then I would skip usually 2 pages so that we could have our table of contents. And then I would have the students, my first graders, my kindergartners wouldn't really do this, number the pages in the corner as far as they could go into the notebook. And if they couldn't go that far, it was totally okay. When we would work on that page, then I would tell them, remember, this is page number 22. And we would write the number of the page together on the notebook. That made it easy to refer to in the table of contents if we would write the page number beside what we were putting in there. Okay, so title page, then pages for the table of contents, then the pocket in the back. Like I said, this is just, I've seen people use the big yellow folders that like have the brad that close. This worked just fine for us. And then inside, like, we called them unused pieces. So sometimes if it was like a cut and paste that I gave them for their foldable, they needed to, if they didn't have enough time to finish, because science was always at the end of our school day. Then they would put them in the envelope, and the next morning when they came in, I would just have them leave their journal out, and they would finish working on those pieces they would finish gluing those pieces in the morning when they came in. And then we would make a science journal cover, and I usually would give them something to color however they wanted, and then we would glue it on. I have seen also where teachers just let the kids decorate however they want. It is very important that you let them color or decorate so that they are like super proud and they feel like it's theirs and they take ownership of it. And then we would use a ribbon. And as you can see, I've tied my ribbon right here at the top. I just tied it across the top spiral. And then, guys, it serves as like a bookmark to help the kids, find their spot. So wherever we were that day, we would put our ribbon bookmark, and then it made it easy to find where they left off. That also helped keep us from skipping pages, because I learned really quickly, that kids would be like, I'm out of pages. And I'm like, wait, but you skipped 5 pages, like right here between these, and now your pages aren't lining up right, or your table of contents isn't going to be accurate. So that helped us not skip pages too. That was awesome. Okay. Let me keep going. All right, so some other tips and some other things that we did in our classroom that made it super easy was that all of our foldables were easy to fold and cut. So my kids learned really quickly. They cut on the solid black, they cut out the foldable on the solid black line, and then they're going to cut on the dotted lines too. And then we used a lot of the same designs. So like there were a lot of the same foldables, like that would be a square and folded in and were triangles. We used a lot like this also, that were just folded in half, and then they cut on the dotted line. I'm sorry, I realized I said that wrong. They learned quickly that we folded on the solid lines and then we cut on the dotted lines, because this up here was a solid line that they folded on, and then they cut the dotted lines. So then they knew how to make the flaps. So we used simple templates, and I used the same kind of templates over and over so that they knew, oh, this one is just like our weather one. Oh, this is just like our textures one. They got used to seeing the same styles over and over so that I wasn't constantly reteaching how to fold and manipulate and create something. It just made it a little bit easier, and it helped us save time, honestly. Okay, the other thing is, my other tip is not to stress about writing conventions. I did not want my kids to not write something down because they were worried about getting it wrong. I wanted them to just focus on writing down their thoughts, their ideas, their questions on their output side, and on their input side, I wanted them to just worry about putting together the foldable and writing down the content that they knew that they had taken in on that side. I didn't want them to stress about that capital letter in the period. And that's also why these kind of served as like an authentic look at their writing, because it's what they were doing all of the time when we weren't grading writing conventions, so to speak. So remember, these don't have to be fancy. So while I made lots of my templates, I eventually made all of my templates. We didn't start out that way. So let me show you. In this one from 5 years ago, we just used a piece of manila paper. I showed them how to fold it and cut it into 4 flaps. We wrote words with markers. We drew our pictures. And this was the foldable that we made. So it's nothing super fancy. I'm looking for another specific one. This one, it's going to be hard to see, was texture, and all of my pieces have since come unglued, but we traced our hand, and then on every fingertip, we glued a different item that went with the texture that we were learning about. So like we glued We glued wax paper on for smooth. We glued peas on for bumpy and made it like bumpy. We glued a piece of sandpaper on for rough, that sort of thing, as we were learning about texture. I was going to see if there was one more. I don't think I have it in here. But another one of the first ones that we did, we actually used Post-it notes. So we used Post-it notes, and on the page, I'll see if I can just pretend show you. So on the page, we put 4 Post-it notes to make 4 flaps. And then they wrote on the outside of the Post-it notes. I helped them with that. And then inside they wrote, I think we did it with seasons. So then inside they wrote to describe the season that we had written on the outside, or they drew a picture underneath the flaps. So we used Post-it notes to create our flaps too. So like I said, they don't have to be super fancy. You want them to be a reflection of the students' learning. You want them to be something that they enjoy doing and that they love doing, and that they look forward to and that they're proud of at the end. So if you're looking for a way to make interactive notebooks super simple, I have 6 sets of interactive notebook pages that save you time and that make implementing notebooks a breeze. So they are directly aligned with the Texas first grade teaching standards for science. But I will say I have many kindergarten and second grade teachers who use them. I know in Texas, a lot of our standards overlap. And while I use them and created them as a first grade teacher in my classroom, when I moved down to kindergarten, there were many components that I was able to use. So you can buy each set individually, or you can buy them in a bundle and you'll save some money that way. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that there are some freebies. So there is, it's not this science journal cover. These are the covers that are included with the interactive notebook pages that you can purchase in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and there's a link above. But there is a free science journal cover on my blog. And there are the strips that say my unused pieces that you glue on the envelope on my blog as well. So you can grab those from my blog, and I posted the link above in the comments as well. Do you put something in them every day? Markeisha asks. Great question. The answer is no, I don't. Lots of times we might start the interactive notebook on Monday. Maybe the students will start working on the output side on Monday, and then maybe on Thursday or Friday, kind of when we're done with our topics for the week, with our science unit for the week, that's usually when we would do it. Now, sometimes we would have 2 or 3 interactive notebooks that we would do throughout the week. But most of the time, no, we did not. I did not like say we're making a foldable every single day. They are always welcome to add to that output side of their journal, of their science interactive notebook when they want. So great question. I'm so glad that you asked. If anybody has any more questions, I'll be hanging around for a little bit online tonight, and so I can answer any questions that you have. You can just post them in the comments below. I'm so glad you joined me though, and thanks so much for coming, and I will see you soon. Bye guys.